Thanks again for joining me today while I practice. Today I'm working on the Kohler Etude in F major. You can find it in the Voxman Selected Studies book on page 10. It's marked Lento, a Cantabile. I have a click track prepared for this etude that has the Lento sections at quarter equals 55 and the un poco animato section at quarter equals 88. I'll go ahead and add a link to that click track in the description of this video so that you can practice with it. The upside of the click track is it helps you with your rhythm and tempo, especially those changes. The downside of the click track is you're probably going to have to drop a note here and there to make sure that you can breathe and stay with it. So the video today, I'm going to play a full run through of the etude with that click track at the beginning. I'll share with you some of my favorite practice tips, and then I'll do one more run through of the etude at the end, just for good measure. All right, so in this click track, you're going to get 4 clicks, and that's the first measure. That's that pickup measure. So you have to come in on the and of 4. 2, 3, 4. Great. So pretty tricky with the click track. I think it actually might be harder with the click track. But let's go ahead, let's zoom in on some of these little tricky bits. All right, at the very, very beginning, let's just go over this rhythm with our metronome set to the 8th note. So I'm actually, let's do 96 for our 8th note, just to get the timing in that first phrase. 1 and 2 and 3 and great. All right. So I think the most common problem that I find I run into and that students run into on this etude is just smushing some of these quicker gestures a little bit too much. So a lot of times at the beginning, I'll hear a really squished triplet. So it'll sound like this. So really make sure that you've got that eighth note pulse going in your mind. And also be careful that you don't start this etude too slow, because if you start this too slow, I think it's just really hard to play that way. Okay, now let's take a look at the un poco and amato section. So there's a couple of really tricky moments in there, and then also the other tricky aspect of breathing. All right, so let's just take a look at measures 26 and 29. They're kind of right on top of each other. So 26 is this one. It's the third measure of the section. The other one is 29, right underneath it. Those are finger twisters, aren't they? So I'm going to start by just using my long, short practice rhythm. So here's measure 26, long, short. I'm going to do it again since some of my notes weren't quite right. Good, now 29. Again, one more time, long, short. Okay, now I'm going to do short, long. 26. Great. Now I'm going to play triplet long. So 1, 2, 3, long, 1, 2, 3, long. Here's a 26. Ready. Let's do that one more time. A, F, B, A, G, E, A, G, F, D, E, F. Ready. Good, same thing on the next one in 29. Great, so we can do the opposite of that and play long, 1, 2, 3, long, 1, 2, 3. But I want to go ahead and actually jump into some articulation practice in that same thing. I'm now going to do slur 2, tongue 2, measure 26. Okay, same thing in measure 29. All right, I'm going to do the opposite, tongue 2, slur 2. Tongue 2, slur 2 at measure 29. Great. Now I'm going to play slur 2, slur 2. Again at measure 29. slur 2, slur 2. Great. Now I'm going to try and make it a little bit trickier. I'm going to tongue the outer 2 notes and slur the inner 2 notes. So ta 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 ta. Good. Measure 29, same thing. Tongue 1, slur 2, tongue 1. Ready. Great. If you're still struggling with this, I'd encourage you to also practice my ghost playing technique, in which you'll play some of the notes, but you'll finger all of them. So you could do that in the same section by playing the first group of 4, and then fingering the second group of 4, playing the next group of 4, and fingering the next 4. So here's 26, that style. Now at 28, same thing. The trick with that is do not hesitate. Keep time moving. There's no extra time in there, but it is really, really effective and helpful. Another way I could practice this section is really very intentionally breathing. So what do I mean by taking the time to intentionally breathe? So especially if you're adding a breath mark where you wouldn't ordinarily breathe, this practice can be really helpful in just kind of getting your body to remember that you're going to pause to take a breath there. So I'm going to start in the un poco animado section, and I'm going to take way more time to breathe than I ordinarily would in the spots where I'm adding breaths that feel and sound a little unnatural. So for instance, breaking those ties. So now I'm going to play at the un poco animado section. This time I'm going to take more time than I usually would to breathe. All I'm doing is trying to train myself to say, okay, I'm going to take just a snippet of a pause here to sneak in a breath. As I practice, I'm going to gradually reduce the time that I take to breathe so that it isn't quite so jarring, and eventually I'll get down to that quick sip of a catch breath. Okay, so from un poco animado. So this time I'm going to try as best I can to sneak in that catch breath in those exact spots. I'm going to try it once, and then I'm going to go back with my metronome to see if I am on track. So. I'm going to try that now at 88, my tempo for this un poco animado section. So, 1, 2, 3. Not too bad, but you'll notice I actually dropped my breath. in measure 28 because I didn't feel like I needed it at the time. And by the time I got to the end of measure 30, I was kind of suffering and would have really, really been happy to have gotten a breath in there because there's not much time for me to get a very full breath before measure 31. All right, let's go ahead and go back to the beginning and go for another run through. This time I'm going to play it without the click track. I'm going to just double check that tempo at 55 before I start those so that I don't start too slow. All right, here is our run through. 1, 2, 3. Thanks so much for playing with me today, and good luck on your audition.